The smell hit me first, expensive cologne mixed with something else I couldn't quite place, something that didn't belong in my garage at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. I was under the hood of my old Ford, trying to figure out why it was making that grinding noise again, when I heard Dana's voice through the thin wall that separated our garage from the kitchen. "No, he's completely clueless," she whispered into her phone. "I told you he's fixing that piece of junk truck again. He'll be out there for hours." I froze, wrench still in my hand. 22 years of marriage, and I'd never heard that tone in her voice before. Soft, intimate, guilty. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow night," she continued. "The Marriott on 5th Street, room 237. Same as always. Same as always." Jesus Christ. I always wondered what betrayal would feel like when it finally happened to me. Turns out, it's like getting punched in the stomach by someone wearing brass knuckles, except the pain doesn't stop. It just keeps radiating outward until your whole body feels like it's been hit by a freight train. "He thinks I'm at another team dinner," Dana laughed. Actually laughed. "Poor bastard probably believes I'm discussing quarterly projections with the marketing team." I set the wrench down carefully, my hands shaking. Dana worked at Pinnacle Marketing, one of those slick agencies downtown that charge small businesses ridiculous amounts of money to tell them what everyone already knew. She'd been putting in long hours lately, coming home smelling like wine and making excuses about client meetings that ran late. Now I knew what those late meetings really were. "I love you too, Ethan," she whispered, before hanging up. Ethan Morrison. I knew that name. He was one of the senior account managers at her firm, some hotshot who drove a BMW and wore suits that probably cost more than I made in a month. I'd met him at the company Christmas party last year. Tall, perfectly styled hair, the kind of smile that made you want to punch him in the face on principle. Apparently, my wife had found that smile irresistible. I stayed in the garage until I heard her footsteps going upstairs, then waited another hour before going inside. Dana was already asleep, or pretending to be. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, looking at the woman I'd shared my life with for more than 2 decades. In the dim light from the hallway, she looked peaceful, innocent even. What a complete joke. The next morning, Dana acted completely normal. She made coffee, kissed my cheek, and complained about her busy schedule like she had 1,000 times before. But now I noticed things I'd missed, or chosen to ignore. The way she'd started wearing more makeup, the new perfume, the fact that she'd been going to the gym religiously for the past 6 months, something she'd never shown interest in before. "I'll be late again tonight," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Big presentation tomorrow and the team wants to go over everything one more time." "Which team member will you be going over everything with?" I asked. She looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just curious about who's so dedicated to their job that they're willing to work until midnight on a Wednesday." "The whole team, obviously." Her voice had an edge to it now. "Why are you being weird about this?" I shrugged. "Just seems like you've been working a lot of late nights lately." "Hope they're paying you overtime." "You know how important this promotion is to me, Tom. I thought you were supportive of my career. Supportive. Right. I'd been supportive when she went back to school for her MBA. Supportive when she took the job at Pinnacle that required her to travel twice a month. Supportive when she started making more money than me and began looking at me like I was some kind of charity case she'd outgrown. "Of course I'm supportive," I said. "I just miss spending time with my wife." She softened slightly. "I know, honey. This project will be over soon, and then things can go back to normal." Normal. If only she knew that normal was already long gone. After Dana left for work, I did something I'd never done in 22 years of marriage. I went through her things. I started with her laptop, but she'd taken it with her. Then I remembered the iPad we shared, the one we used for Netflix and online shopping. My hands were shaking as I opened her email. Most of it was work-related bullshit, but then I found a folder labeled Personal. Inside were dozens of emails from Ethan Morrison, dating back 8 months. 8 damn months. The early emails were professional, discussing client strategies and meeting schedules. But gradually, they became more personal. Compliments about her presentation skills, comments about how much he enjoyed working with her. Then came the first suggestion of drinks after work to celebrate closing the Henderson account. I scrolled through months of increasingly intimate correspondence, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. By month 3, they were meeting regularly for work dinners that had nothing to do with work. By month 5, Ethan was writing things like, "I can't stop thinking about yesterday afternoon," and "You're incredible, Dana. Your husband doesn't know how lucky he is." By month 8, last week, the emails were explicit enough to make me want to put my fist through the screen, but it was the photos that really did me in. Dana had saved dozens of pictures from their business trips together. The two of them at expensive restaurants I'd never heard of. Ethan's arm around her waist at some conference in Chicago. A selfie of them in what was obviously a hotel room, Dana wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, both of them flushed and grinning like teenagers. The most recent photo was taken just 3 days ago. Dana and Ethan at some lakeside cottage, sitting on a deck with drinks in their hands. She was wearing a bikini, a red one that definitely wasn't in our dresser at home, and looking at him like he'd hung the moon. I stared at that picture for a long time, memorizing every detail. The way she was leaning into him, the proprietary hand he had on her thigh, the expression of pure happiness on her face, an expression I hadn't seen directed at me in years. That's when I started planning. I could have confronted Dana immediately, could have printed out the emails and photos and thrown them in her face when she came home with another bullshit story about working late. But I'd learned a long time ago that information was power, and I wanted to know exactly what I was dealing with before I made my move. So I waited. I watched. I documented everything. Dana came home at midnight that Wednesday, reeking of wine, deceit, and something else. She said the team meeting had run late, and they went for drinks afterward to celebrate landing a new client. She was animated, almost euphoric, going on about how well things were going at work, and how that promotion was finally within her grasp. "Ethan thinks I have a real shot at the senior VP position," she said, not realizing she'd just confirmed what I already knew. "He's been mentoring me, helping me understand the political side of the business. I'll bet he has." "That's great, honey," I said. "Ethan seems like a real stand-up guy." She looked at me sharply, but I kept my expression neutral. After 22 years, I knew how to hide what I was thinking. Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own life. I installed a tracking app on Dana's phone while she was in the shower, something I'd learned about from a guy at work whose wife had been cheating on him. I started paying attention to her schedule, cross-referencing her claimed whereabouts with where she actually was. The results were exactly what I expected and somehow still devastating. Every late meeting was actually a rendezvous with Ethan at various hotels around the city. Every business dinner was a romantic evening at some upscale restaurant I could never afford. The weekend conference she'd attended last month had actually been 2 days at a bed and breakfast in Vermont, just the two of them. I also started following them occasionally, keeping my distance and taking photos with my phone. I felt like a stalker, but I needed evidence. Not for divorce court. Maine was a no-fault state, so her adultery wouldn't matter much legally. I needed evidence for something else entirely. The breaking point came on a Friday night. Dana had claimed she was going to her sister's house to help with some family crisis, but the tracking app showed she was at the Marriott downtown. I drove over and parked across the street, waiting. At 9:30, I watched my wife of 22 years walk out of the hotel lobby with Ethan Morrison. They were holding hands, laughing about something, completely oblivious to the world around them. He walked her to her car, the Honda Accord I'd helped her pick out 3 years ago, and kissed her goodbye. Not a peck on the cheek, but a full, passionate kiss that lasted long enough for me to take several photos. Then he got into his BMW and drove away, and Dana got into the car I'd co-signed for and drove home to lie to my face about where she'd been. I beat her home by 10 minutes. When she walked in at 10:15, I was sitting in the living room with a beer, watching SportsCenter like nothing had happened. "How's your sister doing?" I asked, without looking away from the TV. "Better," Dana said, not missing a beat. "It was just some drama with her ex-husband. You know how she gets." "Yeah, I know how she gets." I took a sip of my beer. "Did you grab dinner while you were over there?" "Just some takeout Chinese. Nothing fancy." I nodded, still staring at the screen. "That's good. I was thinking we should go out to dinner soon. Maybe that new place downtown, the one near the Marriott. I heard they have great steaks." I felt her tense behind me, but when I finally turned around, her expression was perfectly composed. "That sounds nice," she said. "I'm going to take a shower and head to bed. Long day tomorrow." "Another late meeting?" "Probably." This Morrison account is keeping the whole team busy. Morrison account. Jesus Christ, she wasn't even trying anymore. After she went upstairs, I sat in the dark living room and tried to figure out what I was going to do. Part of me wanted to pack my bags and leave that night. Just walk away from the whole mess and start over somewhere else. But a bigger part of me, the part that had spent 22 years building a life with this woman, wanted revenge. Not just revenge, justice. Dana thought she was so smart, so careful. She thought I was too stupid or too trusting to figure out what was going on. She was probably laughing about it with Ethan, making jokes about her clueless husband who spent his evenings fixing old trucks while she was out living her best life. Well, we'd see who got the last laugh. I spent the weekend planning. I researched Ethan Morrison online, learning everything I could about him. 38 years old, divorced, no kids. He lived in a condo downtown and drove a leased BMW. His social media profiles were full of photos from expensive vacations and trendy restaurants, the kind of lifestyle Dana had always wanted but could never afford on my salary. I also learned that he had a reputation at Pinnacle Marketing for being a player. A few carefully worded questions to people I knew in the business revealed that Ethan had been involved with at least 2 other co-workers in the past 5 years, including one woman who'd ended up leaving the company after their relationship went south. Dana wasn't special. She was just his latest conquest. On Monday morning, I made my decision. I waited until Dana left for work, then drove downtown to Pinnacle Marketing. I'd been there a few times over the years for company parties and holiday events, so I knew the layout. The building had a parking garage underneath, and I knew Ethan parked his BMW on the 3rd level, in spot 3A. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor and found his car easily. It was pristine, of course, detailed and waxed to perfection. The kind of car that screamed, "I have money and I want everyone to know it." I pulled out my keys and walked slowly around the BMW, dragging the metal along the paint. The sound was horrible, like fingernails on a chalkboard, but also deeply satisfying. I carved a message into the driver's side door, "Homewrecker." Then I slashed all 4 tires. It was petty, I'll admit, but it felt damn good. I was back home within an hour, and when Dana called me at lunch to complain about some asshole who'd vandalized Ethan's car, I made all the right sympathetic noises. "That's terrible," I said. "Some people have no respect for other people's property." "I hope they catch whoever did it." "The security cameras didn't catch anything useful," she said. "Ethan's really upset about it. The car is going to be in the shop for at least a week." "Well, I'm sure his insurance will cover it. These things happen, but I was just getting started. The car vandalism was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. I wanted Ethan and Dana to understand that their little secret wasn't so secret anymore. More importantly, I wanted them to sweat. Over the next 2 weeks, I launched what I thought of as a psychological warfare campaign. Nothing illegal, nothing that could be traced back to me directly, but enough to make them paranoid and uncomfortable. I started by creating anonymous email accounts and sending Ethan messages at work. Nothing threatening, just cryptic comments that let him know someone was watching. "Enjoyed your dinner at Romano's last Tuesday. The salmon looked delicious. Nice hotel choice on Friday. Room service must have been excellent. I did the same thing with Dana, but more subtly. I'd mention things in casual conversation that I shouldn't have known about. When she claimed she'd worked late on Thursday, I'd ask how the Thai food was, because I'd seen her and Ethan at a Thai restaurant that night. When she said she'd been in meetings all afternoon, I'd comment on how nice the weather had been for a walk in the park, because that's where they'd actually been. At first, she just seemed confused, but gradually, I could see the paranoia setting in. She started checking over her shoulder when she thought I wasn't looking. She became more secretive with her phone, taking it with her even when she went to the bathroom. She started asking me strange questions about my day, trying to figure out if I'd been following her. The beautiful thing was that she couldn't confront me directly without admitting what she'd been doing. She was trapped in her own web of lies. But the real breakthrough came when I decided to involve other people. I'd been thinking about our friend group, the couples we'd socialized with for years, the people who thought Dana and I had the perfect marriage. Most of them were connected to us through Dana's work or social activities, and I'd always felt like the odd man out. The blue-collar guy who didn't quite fit in with their white-collar world. But I knew something they didn't know. Dana had been talking shit about all of them behind their backs for years. See, Dana was one of those people who couldn't resist gossip. She'd come home from dinner parties and girls' nights and tell me everything, who was having marriage problems, who was struggling financially, who was drinking too much or taking antidepressants or having issues with their kids. She thought it was harmless, just blowing off steam, but I'd been storing all that information away without even realizing it. Now I had a use for it. I started with Jennifer Walsh, Dana's closest friend from college. Jennifer was married to a guy named Mike who worked in finance, and they had 2 teenage kids. Dana had told me months ago that Jennifer suspected Mike of having an affair with his secretary, but she was too scared to confront him because she didn't want to break up the family. I created another anonymous email account and sent Jennifer a message. Your husband isn't the only one keeping secrets. Ask Dana about her late-night meetings with Ethan Morrison. Some friends tell each other everything, except the things that matter most. I sent similar messages to 3 other women in Dana's social circle, each one tailored to what I knew about their relationships with her. I didn't provide details or evidence. I just planted seeds of doubt and let their imaginations do the rest. The results were immediate and spectacular. Within a week, Dana was fielding uncomfortable questions from her friends. Jennifer confronted her directly about the Ethan situation, and when Dana denied everything, Jennifer accused her of being a hypocrite who judged other people's marriages while destroying her own. Sarah Martinez, another friend, stopped inviting Dana to their monthly book club meetings. When Dana asked why, Sarah said she'd heard some disturbing rumors and thought it would be better if Dana took a break from the group until she got her personal life sorted out. Even worse, the gossip started spreading to Dana's professional network. Someone, I never found out who, mentioned the rumors to people at Pinnacle Marketing. Suddenly, Dana and Ethan's professional relationship was under scrutiny from their colleagues and supervisors. Dana came home one night in tears, ranting about how cruel and unfair people were being to her. They're acting like I'm some kind of slut, she sobbed. All because of stupid rumors that aren't even true. I held her while she cried, making comforting noises and telling her that people were just jealous of her success. Inside, I was celebrating, but the best part was still to come. 2 days later, Dana's boss called her into his office for what she thought was a routine check-in. Instead, he informed her that the company had decided to transfer Ethan to their Boston office, effective immediately. There had been too much workplace gossip about his relationship with Dana, and upper management felt it was best for everyone if they were separated. Dana was devastated. She came home that night and told me the whole story, spinning it as a professional tragedy that would hurt her chances for promotion. It's so unfair, she said. Ethan is one of the most talented people at the company, and they're basically forcing him out because of office politics and jealous people spreading lies. That does sound unfair, I agreed, but maybe it's for the best. You wouldn't want people to think your professional relationship with him was anything other than professional. She looked at me sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that office gossip can be really damaging, even when it's completely baseless. Better to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. There was no impropriety, Tom. Ethan and I worked together, that's all. I nodded sympathetically. Of course. I never thought otherwise, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was starting to wonder how much I knew, how much I'd figured out. The paranoia was eating her alive. A week later, Ethan moved to Boston. Dana claimed she was relieved that the drama was over, but I could tell she was heartbroken. She moped around the house, barely eating, spending hours staring at her phone like she was waiting for a call that never came. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the photos from the lakeside cottage, the months of lies, the way she'd laughed about me being clueless while she was screwing another man in hotel rooms I was helping pay for with my salary. My sympathy evaporated pretty quickly. The thing was, I'd accomplished something I hadn't expected. I'd broken them up without revealing that I knew about the affair. Dana and Ethan were separated by 300 miles and a professional scandal that made it impossible for them to continue their relationship. They couldn't even communicate openly without risking their careers. I should have been satisfied. I should have let it end there. But I wasn't done. Not even close. With Ethan out of the picture, I thought Dana might try to repair our marriage. Maybe come clean about what had happened and beg for forgiveness. Maybe suggest couples counseling or a romantic getaway to reconnect. Instead, she became distant and resentful. She blamed me for not being supportive enough during her difficult time at work. She criticized everything I did, from the way I loaded the dishwasher to the clothes I wore to the friends I hung out with. You know what your problem is, Tom, she said one night after I'd made some innocuous comment about dinner. You have no ambition. You're perfectly content to fix trucks and drink beer and never grow as a person. Some of us want more from life. That's when I realized she wasn't sorry about the affair. She was sorry it had ended. It was also when I decided to escalate things with our mutual friends. See, Dana wasn't the only one who'd been keeping secrets. Over the years, I'd heard plenty of gossip from the husbands in our social circle, the guys I'd have a few beers with while our wives were off talking about whatever it is wives talk about. They told me things they probably shouldn't have, the same way Dana told me things about their wives. Now it was time to use that information. I started with Rick Patterson, a guy I'd known since high school. Rick was married to one of Dana's friends, and he'd always been the type to run his mouth when he'd had a few drinks. A couple of years ago, he'd confessed to me that he'd been gambling online and had lost about $15,000 that his wife didn't know about. He'd begged me not to say anything, and I'd kept his secret. Until now. I called Rick on a Thursday evening and asked if he wanted to grab a beer. We met at Murphy's, a dive bar on the edge of town where we used to hang out in our 20s. I need to ask you something, I said after we'd been drinking for about an hour. And I need you to be straight with me. Sure, man, what's up? Did you know about Dana and Ethan Morrison? Rick's face went white. What about them? Come on, Rick. Don't bullshit me. I know they were having an affair. What I want to know is how many other people knew. He stared at his beer for a long time before answering. I heard some rumors. Nothing concrete. What kind of rumors? Just that they were spending a lot of time together. Someone saw them at a restaurant in the next town over looking pretty cozy, but I didn't know for sure and I didn't think it was my place to say anything. I nodded. I appreciate the honesty. Really. But here's the thing, Rick. I'm wondering how many other secrets people in our group have been keeping from each other. His face went even whiter. What do you mean? Well, for instance, does Linda know about your little gambling problem? The 15 grand you lost on poker sites last year? Rick's hands started shaking. Tom, you promised you wouldn't. I promised I wouldn't tell Linda. I never promised I wouldn't tell anyone else. I leaned forward. See, I'm starting to think our whole friend group is built on lies and secrets. Maybe it's time we all started being honest with each other. What do you want? I want you to call Linda right now and tell her about the gambling. All of it. How much you lost, how you've been hiding it, everything. I can't do that. She'll leave me. Maybe. Or maybe she'll appreciate the honesty. Either way, you're going to tell her. Or I am. Rick stared at me like I'd grown a second head. What the hell is wrong with you? What's wrong with me is that I spent 22 years being the good guy, the loyal friend, the understanding husband, and you know what it got me? A cheating wife, and a bunch of friends who knew about it but didn't have the balls to tell me. I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. You've got 24 hours, Rick. Tell Linda yourself or I'll do it for you. I walked out of the bar and left him sitting there, staring at his beer and probably wondering how his quiet evening had turned into a nightmare. The next day, Rick called me to tell me he'd confessed everything to Linda. She'd screamed at him for 2 hours, then kicked him out of the house. He was staying at his brother's place and wasn't sure if his marriage was going to survive. I hope you're happy, he said. Actually, I am. At least now Linda knows the truth. She can make an informed decision about her future instead of living a lie. You're a real bastard, you know that? Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. But I wasn't done with Rick. 2 days later, I called him again. I've been thinking about our conversation, I said, and I realized there's something else Linda should probably know. What now? Remember that bachelor party you went to last summer? The one in Atlantic City? There was a long silence. What about it? You told me some interesting stories about that trip. Something about a strip club and a private room and activities that went way beyond just looking. Tom, that was just talk. Guys bullshitting after a few drinks. Was it? Because you were pretty specific about details. The girl's name was Crystal, I think. You said she had a butterfly tattoo on her shoulder. Another long silence. What do you want? He asked finally. I want you to understand something, Rick. I'm not the same person I was 2 weeks ago. The old Tom would have kept your secrets forever no matter what, but the old Tom was a sucker. The new Tom believes in truth and consequences. You're blackmailing me. I'm motivating you to be honest with your wife. There's a difference. What do you want me to do? Nothing for now. Just remember that I know things about you. Things that Linda might find very interesting. And if you or anyone else in our little group decides to give me any shit about my situation with Dana, those things might slip out in conversation. I hung up before he could respond. Over the next week, I had similar conversations with 2 other guys from our social circle. Jim Morrison, no relation to Ethan, had been cheating on his taxes for years, claiming fake business expenses and unreported income. Dave Collins had been having an emotional affair with a woman from his gym. Nothing physical, but plenty of inappropriate texting and secret meetings that his wife knew nothing about. By the end of the week, I had leverage over half the men in our friend group. More importantly, I had their attention. The confrontation I'd been waiting for finally came on a Saturday afternoon. I was working on my truck in the garage when 4 of them showed up. Rick, Jim, Dave, and Tony Martinez, Sarah's husband, who I hadn't targeted who'd apparently been elected spokesman. We need to talk, Tony said. I wiped my hands on a rag and looked at them. 4 middle-aged guys in polo shirts and khakis, trying to look tough, but mostly just looking scared. Sure, what's on your minds? You know what's on our minds, Tony said. This campaign of harassment you're running against your friends. Harassment? I think you mean honesty. I'm just encouraging people to be truthful with their spouses. You're blackmailing people, Rick said. Threatening to destroy marriages over shit that's none of your business. I laughed. That's rich coming from you guys. Where was all this concern about destroying marriages when Dana was screwing around with Ethan? Where was the loyalty then? That was different, Jim said. We didn't have proof of anything. just rumors. Bullshit. You all knew exactly what was going on, and you all decided it was easier to keep your mouths shut than to do the right thing. Well, congratulations. You taught me a valuable lesson about friendship. So this is revenge? Tony asked. This is justice. You want to know what harassment looks like? It's finding out your wife has been cheating on you for 8 months while your so-called friends stand around with their thumbs up their asses, pretending they don't see anything. We were trying to stay out of it, Dave said. It wasn't our place to get involved in your marriage. But it's your place to get involved now? Funny how that works. Tony stepped forward, trying to look intimidating. This ends now, Tom. Whatever you think you know about us, whatever games you're playing, it stops today. I set down the rag and looked at each of them in turn. Or what? You'll beat me up? Call the cops? Go ahead. I'd love to explain to everyone why 4 upstanding members of the community decided to gang up on a guy whose only crime was encouraging honesty in marriage. You're out of control, Rick said. No, I'm in control for the first time in 22 years, and you know what? I picked up a wrench and turned back to the truck. Now get off my property before I decide to share some more truths with some more wives. They left, but I knew it wasn't over. They'd be back, or they'd try something else, but I didn't care. For the first time since I'd discovered Dana's affair, I felt like I had the upper hand. The war was just getting started. After the confrontation with my former friends, I realized I'd been thinking too small. Sure, I'd caused some chaos in our social circle, and yeah, I'd broken up Dana and Ethan's little love affair. But Dana was still living in my house, still lying to my face every day, still acting like she was the victim in all of this. It was time to end it. All of it. I spent the next week planning what I thought of as the nuclear option. I was going to expose everything, to everyone, all at once. No more subtle hints or anonymous emails. No more psychological warfare. I was going to burn it all down and walk away from the ashes. The opportunity came sooner than I'd expected. Dana announced that she was organizing a dinner party for the following Saturday. Just a small gathering, she said. Some people from work, a few friends. I think it would be good for us to socialize more, show everyone that we're doing fine despite all the recent drama. Translation. She wanted to rehabilitate her image after the Ethan scandal, and she figured having me play the supportive husband would help convince people that the affair rumors had been baseless. That sounds great, I said. Who's coming? She rattled off a list of names: Jennifer and Mike Walsh, Sarah and Tony Martinez, a few people from Pinnacle Marketing, including her new boss, and, this was the kicker, Ethan Morrison, who was apparently in town for the weekend. I thought it would be good for people to see that Ethan and I can be in the same room without any weirdness, she said. You know, put all those stupid rumors to rest once and for all. I almost laughed out loud. Dana was so desperate to maintain her facade that she was willing to invite her lover to dinner with her husband. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. Absolutely, I said. I think that's a wonderful idea. I spent the week preparing. I gathered every piece of evidence I'd collected over the past few months: printed emails, photos, hotel receipts, credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and hotels on days when Dana claimed to be working late. I organized it all chronologically, creating a timeline that told the complete story of the affair from beginning to end. Then I prepared my presentation. On Saturday afternoon, while Dana was getting ready for the party, I set up my laptop in the living room and connected it to our big screen TV. I told Dana I wanted to show some vacation photos after dinner, maybe create a nice nostalgic atmosphere for our guests. She thought it was a sweet idea. The guests started arriving at 6. I played the perfect host, greeting everyone warmly, taking drink orders, making small talk about work and weather and local sports teams. When Ethan arrived, looking nervous but trying to project confidence, I shook his hand and told him how good it was to see him again. Boston treating you well? I asked. It's an adjustment, he said. But the new position is a great opportunity. I'm sure it is. Sometimes a change of scenery is exactly what a person needs. He looked at me strangely, like he was trying to figure out if there was a hidden meaning in my words. There was, but he wouldn't understand it until later. Dinner was perfect. Dana had outdone herself with the food, and the conversation flowed smoothly. People seemed relaxed, happy to be socializing again after all the recent drama. Even Jennifer Walsh, who'd been giving Dana the cold shoulder for weeks, seemed to be warming up again. After we finished eating, I stood up and tapped my wine glass with a fork. Before we moved to the living room for dessert, I said, I'd like to say a few words about friendship and honesty and the importance of truth in our relationships. Dana beamed at me, probably thinking I was about to give some heartfelt speech about how much our friends meant to us. Over the past few months, I continued, I've learned some difficult lessons about the people closest to me. I've discovered that the life I thought I was living was actually built on lies and deception. The room went quiet. Dana's smile faltered. I've learned that my wife of 22 years has been having an affair with a colleague for the past 8 months. I've learned that many of you knew about this affair but chose not to tell me. And I've learned that when you live in a world built on secrets and lies, eventually everything collapses. Dana's face went white. Tom, what are you doing? I'm telling the truth, honey. Something we haven't done in this house for a very long time. I walked over to the laptop and clicked a button. The TV screen filled with an email from Ethan to Dana, dated 6 months earlier. I can't stop thinking about yesterday afternoon. You're incredible, Dana. I wish we didn't have to sneak around like this. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. I clicked to the next slide, a photo of Dana and Ethan kissing in the hotel parking lot. Tom, stop this right now, Dana said, standing up. Why? Isn't this what you wanted? A chance to show everyone that the rumors were false? I clicked again. Another photo, this one of them at the lakeside cottage. Or maybe you'd prefer to explain these pictures yourself. Ethan had gone completely pale. This is insane. You can't just what? Show people evidence of what you've been doing? Why not? You weren't shy about doing it. Why be shy about owning it? I clicked through more evidence. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, explicit text messages. The room was completely silent except for the sound of chairs scraping as people shifted uncomfortably. 8 months, I said conversationally. That's how long this has been going on. 8 months of lies, 8 months of working late and business dinners and team meetings. 8 months of my wife being with another man while I paid the bills, did the laundry, and played the role of the supportive husband. That's enough, Dana shouted. Everyone needs to leave, now. But nobody moved. They were all staring at the screen, transfixed by the train wreck unfolding in front of them. The really beautiful part, I continued, is how many of you knew about this and said nothing. Jennifer, you confronted Dana about the rumors, but only after I fed them to you. Rick, you told me you'd heard they were spending time together, but didn't think it was your place to say anything. Tony, your wife Sarah stopped inviting Dana to book club because of what she'd heard, but nobody bothered to give me a heads up. I looked around the room at their shocked faces. So here's what's going to happen. Dana, you're packing your bags tonight and leaving my house. Ethan, you're going to go back to Boston and stay there. And the rest of you are going to live with the knowledge that when your friend needed you most, you chose cowardice over loyalty. Dana was crying now, but I wasn't done. Oh, and one more thing. I clicked to a final slide, a photo of Dana and Ethan in bed together, obviously taken by one of them as some kind of trophy. This was taken 3 weeks ago, in case anyone was wondering if this was all ancient history. The room erupted. Dana lunged for the laptop, screaming at me to turn it off. Ethan jumped up and started yelling about privacy and lawsuits. Jennifer Walsh called me a bastard. Tony Martinez told everyone this was wrong and they should leave, but I just stood there, watching it all unfold, feeling more satisfied than I had in months. The truth hurts, doesn't it? I said over the chaos. But you know what hurts more? Living a lie for 8 months while everyone around you pretends everything is fine. People started gathering their things and heading for the door. Dana was sobbing, begging them to stay, trying to explain that it wasn't what it looked like. Ethan had already bolted, probably worried about what this would do to his career if word got back to his bosses in Boston. Within 10 minutes, the house was empty except for Dana and me. She stood in the middle of our destroyed living room, mascara running down her face, looking at me like she'd never seen me before. "How could you do this?" she whispered. "How could I do this? Are you serious?" "This was private. Between us. You had no right to humiliate me like that in front of everyone." I laughed, actually laughed. "Private? You made it public the minute you started screwing around with Ethan. You made it public every time you lied to my face about where you were. You made it public every time one of our friends saw you together and had to decide whether to tell me or keep your dirty secret. I never meant for this to happen. It just did. Bullshit. You chose this. Every hotel room, every lie, every time you came home smelling like another man, you chose it. And now you get to live with the consequences." She stared at me for a long moment, then said something that surprised me. "What happened to you, Tom? You used to be kind. You used to be forgiving. That guy ceased to exist the night I heard you telling Ethan how clueless I was. You destroyed him, Dana. This is who you made." She packed her bags that night and went to stay with her sister. Within a week, she'd filed for divorce. Within a month, she'd been fired from Pinnacle Marketing. Apparently, the scandal had made her position there untenable. Ethan lost his job too. Word of the dinner party disaster had somehow made it back to his bosses in Boston, and they decided he was too much of a liability to keep on staff. As for our friends, well, most of them stopped speaking to me entirely. They thought what I'd done was cruel and excessive. A few of them tried to maintain relationships with both Dana and me, but it was awkward and ultimately unsustainable. I didn't care. I'd learned that these people weren't really my friends anyway. Real friends don't let you live a lie for 8 months. Real friends don't choose comfort over loyalty. 6 months later, I was living alone in the house Dana and I had shared for 15 years. I'd kept my business, kept my truck, kept my dignity. Dana was working at a small marketing firm in another state, starting over at 45 with a reputation that followed her wherever she went. Ethan, last I heard, was selling insurance somewhere in Florida. I never remarried. Never even dated seriously. But I wasn't bitter anymore. I'd gotten my revenge, and it had been everything I'd hoped it would be. Complete, devastating, and absolutely justified. Sometimes people ask me if I regret what I did, if I think I went too far, if I wish I'd handled things differently. The answer is no. Dana and Ethan and all the rest of them made their choices, and I made mine. They chose lies and betrayal and cowardice. I chose truth and consequences and justice. And given the choice again, I'd do exactly the same thing. Because sometimes, the only way to win is to make sure everyone else loses.